Hello everyone, it's Jeff Giordano from the Apple Football Club here with the second installment of our Evolution of Apple Football. Today we'll cover the 1960s. We'll start with, of course, the basic outside box, which if you note from the 1957 video is your basic red and white. Classic color, great design, good big box format. You'll note the images, the kicker that we use on our website in various areas. Take account that this finish is a little more glossy than the 1957 version and is in fact a little more pure red. Now, this box actually represents the 1964 NFL season. We bought several sets of 64 AFL sets to compare them. And here, we're not sure exactly what year yet that this red box makes its debut, but we've certainly narrowed the window down considerably. Based on auctions that we've viewed, I think we have some evidence of this appearing maybe a year or two earlier. And as we've noted in our archives, you will see that in several cases, usually the 1970 season, these portions of the typography down here and up here are rendered in white type on a black ribbon background. In this case, again, the classic imagery, it's semi-glossy, not matte. This is one of the early G-top, great teams of the past inserts. Obviously, at this point, it's still letter size. It's Form A65 at this point, with the 53 Eastman Avenue address, and teams numbered to 11. I don't think, at this point, they're not even including the 1956 Bears. They do have the 56 Giants and 58 Colts. And as you can see, and this is in our archives as well, the prices are rather reasonable. Although if you judge today's price of $27 for the basic game with 4 teams and all the rules, it's quite a good deal. Here we are with a pair of contrasting cardboard shakers, still with the metal bottoms. One obviously is getting some use, one is not. Still with a somewhat lighter brown on the football and the yard line marker. And the classic original dice, near as we can tell, these are easy to lose. Very easy to lose. And the red, of course, are a little translucent there. Play cards in this edition still have a seemingly thinner, maybe I'm just not remembering it correctly, but for posterity we have these videos now. Seems a little thinner type on the pass play, run play, etc. Now, noting the typography that we showed in the 1957 set for the NFL, Apple was using a slab serif with a slightly orange-red back. That typography lasted until the 1963 season. 1964 is the first time that you see the new typography for the NFL. I would call it a squarer kind of sans serif. It's certainly clean. There's a little more weight and order to the RPK columns. Still very good thickness to the cards, but now, as you can note, these are a pure red. For the AFL set, which makes its debut in 1964, you see the difference, first of all, in the typography on the envelope and the color red for the NFL versus the black for the AFL. The AFL teams, and then later, of course, the AFC teams, are almost always rendered in black, although we note that in 1987, 88, and 89, the seasons that we own, render the AFC team names, or rather just the cities at that point, in a darker red. But the NFL team names are primarily in a bright red. The AFL set, of course, appears with the classic purple back. Now, as I mentioned in the 1950 video, we have acquired several sets of the 64, and we'll note that the purple on the back is rendered somewhat lightly on occasion with a very flimsy card and a matte front. There would appear to be some sort of change either in the printer's paper, maybe the printing source, but there are other versions of this set that have almost striations, almost lines on these cards, on the fronts, and in some cases are far glossier. But as you can see, compared to the NFL, the AFC has its own typography. That's the NFL here. This is the AFL, and the AFL is rendered in a thinner, more condensed sans serif. What we want to determine, of course, is whether these were printed at roughly the same time, same printer. What were the decisions to use this different typography? Was it a get it out the door kind of an issue, or was it strictly as an identification element? Now, of course, 1965 brings about another change when the AFL is rendered now in the same typography as the NFL cards. And you can compare the purple back. It's a little darker here. Here's the 1964 back. Here's the 1965 back. And you can see there's a lot more, the bendability of this 64 versus this 65. You'll also notice that the 1965 Lions use the same typography. So now we have both sets matching typographically, a kind of a squatter, more squared sans serif, square in kind of the overall X height, I guess, if you will. This typography lasts for both sets up to and including the 1968 season set. In 1969, we have a whole new animal, and that is the new style of sans serif. It's almost an enlarged version of the AFL typography, with Roger Staubach's rookie year. It's a one-off. This only appeared in the 1969 season for football and for baseball, and for, in football, the NFL and AFL cards. Again, these are still red backs, the pure red. It's a clean look, but it only lasted one season. But it's the absolute dead giveaway to any 69 set. It's not quite as fat typography as the 1970 cards, which it's a style that lasted from 1970 to 1984. It's not quite as skinny as the initial AFL typography of 1964. And one thing we forgot to note is the team envelopes in between 1966 and 67. From 1957 to 1963, all teams had the city, the team name, and the conference. When the NFL reorganized in 1967, you now see the classic all-cap fatter serif featuring just the city and team name. And somebody took a nice little stamp, put a nice little stamp on the back of this one here. But you'll see is in 67, the same 64 to 68 typography. That's square sans serif. And that is essentially it for the 60s. Now, we don't have the later 60s boards here. We do have them in the collection, and they do indeed feature 13 at, rather a touchdown at 13 for a kickoff return. You'll see that the kickoff box still has, in the 64 edition, the very thick border relative to the other borders, and is still using the ABC index system, which appears up to the early 70s, I think 71. We'll nail that down, or if anyone else can comment, certainly that helps. Again, you'll see the kickoff returns here still don't have the late 60s updates on them. Looking through the field here, you can see that this one's maybe a little more used, and feels like that green is just that touch darker that you would see in the 70s game. Obviously, that telltale wear around the center strip there for the football marker. Again, still the thick style, virtually indestructible, and the early separate onside kickoff and timeout options, as well as the penalty for the onside kickoff. And also a very early example of the testimonials with a great baseball sample card here, which still reflects actually the baseball specific typography that is similar to the NFL typography of 1957 and 1963. Of course, your blue back there. And of course the wonderful brochure for the baseball game. All its full color glory and just that captivating style that we all know so well. Some of the best game writing you'll ever find is those blurbs that invite you to play a few minutes of APBA football or APBA baseball. And we'll just take a look here. If you notice on the plunge play results, typography feels a little thicker. It might be tough to see in these videos, but we'll try to document that a little more.